Hello interwebs and welcome to Nerd Out. I'm here with Joseph Fink, who is the creator of Welcome to Night Vale and Alice Isn't Dead, and is the co-creator of the Night Vale Presents podcasting network. And we're here to talk today about Alice Isn't Dead, which is just starting its third and final season, and also will be releasing a book in October. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Alice Isn't Dead mainly came out of Welcome to Night Vale live touring. I went from not having seen much of this country to having personal experience with a lot of it. Mm-hmm. You know, I had personally spent time in a good chunk of this country, and I got to this point where I could be like, oh yeah, Fargo. I know Fargo. I have some opinions of what it's like to be there.
Oh yeah, you betcha.
You betcha. We did a live show at the Largo here in LA where we're doing this, and Jasika Nicole was a guest star in that show, and I wrote her this monologue, and then she went out on stage and just absolutely nailed it. Just gave a beautiful performance, and I knew I wanted to write more things for her. I have all these notes of this personal experience of driving around America, and I have this amazing performer. And then because it's me, I made it a horror story because that's what interests me.
Joseph called me over and he said, you know, I have this idea for another podcast and I would love to write it for you, you to be the voice. Also a first for me. Like, nobody's ever written a part for me. And I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know anything about it. I don't need to. I'm happy to.
It's like, I'm the star. It's fine.
When is that going to happen? Yeah. Come on. And I remember reading it on my phone and getting chills. And I was like, whoa, this is like a dark mood. This is really, really cool. And the fact that it affected me so deeply at 2 o'clock on like a Tuesday afternoon, I was like, this is a good sign.
It is really vulnerable to see a queer woman of color going across like America in dark places, in places that's not safe, even if it didn't have paranormal activity.
Totally.
But it's also kind of empowering as well to sort of hear that, see like you being a truck driver and going to these places.
I think that there are so many ideas about what it means to be queer, what it means to be femme, what it means to be person of color. And I, just in my everyday life, feel like I am constantly trying to tear that stuff down. And I think like a lot of disenfranchised communities probably, or members of those communities probably feel like they're constantly trying to take away the stuff that people are already imagining exist in this person. So like me, myself, Jasika, I love to make things. I love to use my hands. I got into woodworking like 4 years ago. And it's always been this like really cool hobby for me. And I do not feel like most people are comfortable with it. I feel like I'm constantly having to re-educate people about things. And so you're right, Keisha, in these circumstances of this show, she's kind of all the things that you wouldn't expect. I mean, in my head, obviously, I don't know if this is true, but I imagined her as this femme woman having to like put on the outfit of somebody that's not quite her identity so that she blends in a little bit more. And like every time I do a live show, I put on like a plaid button down and a hat because I feel like that's what she would, like that's what she would want to do to fit in, whether that's who she actually is inside or not. And so in my head, she's petite. Like there's all these possibilities of what Keisha looks like, and none of them are a typical truck driver. And it sounds like she's probably had panic attacks at some point in her life. So the fact that she's going off on this adventure and, you know, watching people get murdered everywhere and trying to fight against something that she doesn't even really have a name for yet, none of those things you would put on this person, and yet she's doing it. And so to me, the overall theme of it is that everybody is capable of doing really big, powerful things if they're pushed far enough. And that's just a really cool idea.
You know, I was telling this story that has this certain classic American storytelling to it, right? This like trucker searching the country for this wife that was believed to be dead, that in any TV show it would be this grizzled white guy. And so it just kind of felt way more interesting to me to make it a queer person of color. I personally have a hard time focusing on describing a person. That just seems so boring to me. You know, we never say that she's a person of color. I don't believe specifically in the show. We know who she is because of how the world treats her, which is the only kind of important part of that is how it affects the context in which you live in the world. And so you kind of get the sense of who she is because of how she fits into the world rather than me being like, here's what she looks like.
I think that podcasts are sharing voices and narratives, both fictional and nonfiction, that don't get the same kind of attention in mainstream media. So I feel like they kind of carved out this space for all the people who didn't necessarily feel like they were a part of what was normal. Can I do any more air quotes during this interview? Yeah, I think that it just provides a space for so many people that don't see themselves, don't see people that look like them, don't hear their voices or see their stories being told in mainstream media. This is like the place to get it done.